What's going on here? So Crimson Desert is out, and from
Crimson Desert. This has been one of the most highly anticipated games of 2026. It got a ton of attention during its marketing campaign, and the question that people kept asking is, is this real? Is the impressive showcase of the game something we can trust, or is it too good to be true? The game has since launched, and we've got reviews from critics as well as players. We've got numbers in terms of how well this game is doing in terms of sales and concurrent player numbers. And we also got other aspects to the launch that are worth discussing. And so I want to take a look at an overview of the kind of state of Crimson Desert right now amidst its highly anticipated launch, starting with the score that it garnered after reviewers put out their impressions of the title. There's 93
78.
critic reviews on Metacritic right now, and the total aggregate score is a 78%, which is generally favorable, by no means a bad game, but I think a lot of people were hoping or expecting that Crimson Desert would have a higher score, at the low end, somewhere in the 80s, at the high end in the 90s, but it being lower than that highlights a game that got a lot of mixed reception. And, I think for good reason. Even the user score seems to be agreeing here with it matching pretty much the Metascore pretty precisely. And then on Steam, if you look at the user reviews there, you'll find a mixed score of 64% from over 27,000 user
Last time I checked her, so it's at a 74% at the moment.
reviews. And while I think a lot of people are universally praising Crimson Desert for its sense of exploration and discovery, how impressive the open world looks, how gorgeous it is, its impressive size, and the kind of amount of curiosity that it invites. And a lot of people also seem to like the combat, some not, but I feel like generally combat is getting more positive reception than negative, and it's just jam-packed with content. There is a good amount of interactivity, and the lack of hand-holding, of letting players kind of figure out the mechanics and discover things for themselves, instead of, your typical Ubisoft checkbox kind of a thing, is something that is appealing to a certain crowd.
Yeah, of course.
But then there are certain key friction points that's preventing this game from rising to the level of potential that it might have potentially achieved if these issues.
Because I know there's some people that are tired of the yellow paint and the excessive amount of tutorials that they show specifically for certain, at least for certain games. There's they show you got a pop-up or so that'll pause the game or so, it pops up something or so that you need to do. I'm it's different. I'll be honest with you, it's completely different when that doesn't pop up here consistently. I don't personally hate it. I don't despise it whatsoever.
Had been fixed prior to launch, like controls. A lot of people are universally complaining about because it's just really unwieldy and its design sensibilities feel antiquated. The story and dialogue is something that is heavily criticized, and as someone who's delved into the game for a couple hours, not enough hours to make up my mind about the game, but to get a sense of
it still runs very smooth, even for having the Nuvo thing on it. I didn't have any problem. This game runs butterly smooth. It's insane how optimized this game is.
How the main quest story plays out. Yeah, the story is very aimless, and the main quests just kind of pop up. At one point, I was just told to go and arm wrestle this guy, but there was no narrative reason for that. The main quest, it's just you complete one, and then you get another main quest marker telling you to do this, but there's no dialogue.
Wasn't this initially a prequel or supposed to be Black Desert 2 or something like that? Isn't it supposed to be an MMO technically? Wasn't initially the development of this game was supposed to be an MMO, but then they swapped it into a single player game? Because it does give me, I'll be honest with you, it does give me that MMO vibes of this game, at least.
In between that explains why you're going about doing all of these things. It just feels like they're just kind of throwing tasks at you for you to do. So it's a bit aimless when it comes to narrative and whatnot. So if you're expecting a Witcher 3 style experience, this ain't it. There are plenty of bugs and glitches that people are encountering. I myself am having an issue finishing this one quest that tells me talk to this guy, and I talk to him and nothing happens. And there's plenty of stuff like that that's being reported. UI and menu navigation, inventory, and a lack of storage, these quality of life things that are just not handled particularly well. You can't remap buttons for a controller, which is kind of like, I think, the best way to play this game. And then some people are highlighting how, while there are some pretty compelling side quests, there's also a lot of like fetch quests, because this originally started as an MMO, and you can feel that for better and
Okay, there it is. Just as I thought or so.
for worse. And there's just enough like lack of refinement and jankiness to this whole package that it's garnered a lot of mixed reception from people. But the people who do like this game like really, really love it. And a lot of people are also hoping that there's this huge patch that will take a lot of the player feedback and implement that, and it allow for Crimson Desert to realize the full potential
Well, there is a patch
that
during
it
the
can
recording of this
maybe
video. There is
achieve.
a patch.
Thankfully, Crimson Desert's Twitter page here has already come out talking
Funny, most of these have already been addressed with the latest patch. Yeah, that's what I'm saying or so.
about how it's been 36 hours since launch, and we'd like to start by thanking players. But since launch, we have been listening closely to your feedback and doing our best to make improvements to the game. In particular, we're aware of the discomfort many players have experienced with controls, and we're currently preparing a patch to address this. We also want to apologize for not providing keyboard and mouse players with a satisfactory gameplay experience. And so yeah, they're saying like, we are hearing your feedback, and especially the controls being kind of the main point of criticism. And yeah, as someone who's played a couple hours of Crimson Desert, they're incredibly clunky. Like, you can get used to it, but they're not ideal, so I'm glad that they're addressing that. I think the general consensus is that there are enough flaws with Crimson Desert that it absolutely cannot stand up to some of those greatest open world games of all time. But what it does has enough potential, and the fundamentals and what it goes for, and the experience and fun factor that it ultimately provides for
no
players
idea, to be frankly honest.
who like.
Sometimes I keep mistaking or so. Like, that's just personally on me because I played other games in general. Like, I pressed square to attack and everything, and I was kind of like doing other specific button prompts that I'm just not used to because muscle memory, because of other games, the way how they have their stuff and everything. That's why I was just so confused. And then like I was expecting clicking down on the stick or so while moving around or so. I was expecting to click down on the stick to run, but no, you have to spam X in order to run at somebody. I was just kind of like, dude, I hate that. And like just click down on the thumbstick to run at somebody,
Really click with Crimson Desert. All of that can pave the road to a future where the Crimson Desert.
There's another thing too as well. During the combat specifically, when you lock on somebody and you kill somebody, you have to re-lock onto somebody again in order for you to, basically to attack in that specific direction towards the enemy. I hate the lock-on feature in this game because I have to click, I think it's down on the D-pad. I have to click on down on the D-pad every single time to lock on to somebody once I kill somebody. It doesn't move to another, close to somebody who's close to me, an enemy that's close to me. It doesn't lock onto that one immediately. No, I have to re-click it again in order for it, and I have to let go of the thumbstick in order to press it, or just use my index finger to do it.
Franchise and experience can expand, get refined, and it make for a killer, either like enhanced versions of Crimson Desert 1 or make for an incredible Crimson Desert 2. So it's something that people want to see continued. So when it comes to the critical reception, that's what we're looking at. There's the camp of people who really, eventually, the game clicked for them and have not been able to stop playing it. And then for some people, the friction points have just proven to be too much, and they've ultimately found aspects of the game to be too shallow for them to really be able to get immersed in it.
That's
but
fine.
When it comes to the overall number of players who've engaged with this title, it's pretty significant numbers, with the game launching with an all-time peak concurrent player number of 239,045 players. You can see that the retention has been fairly impressive, with players coming back, and now that it's the weekend, you can see a rise in player numbers here that achieves numbers similar to the all-time peak. So that's a great sign of a game that is holding a good amount of attention. It's not necessarily a game that is in the realm of Elden Ring when it comes.
It was in the top 5 though. When I checked or so in the ranking of Steam DP the last time I checked or so earlier this stream, it was at rank number 5.
the player
Slay the
numbers,
Spire is
its
still
hype, and
higher though.
the critical score that it's gotten ultimately hasn't allowed it to explode to the level of some of the biggest successes.
Because he's not doing it in concurrent views, current views, or whatever, you know. So.
But it is still ultimately number 74 when it comes to its ranking of highest all-time peak concurrent player numbers of all time on.
No, that's not here. I'm gonna help Young. Yeah, I'm gonna do his work right now real quick because he's not doing it correctly. So if you do here for most played games of all time or so, Crimson Desert is ranked number 7 right now. So, and then you have Slay the Spire at number 4. You know, so I'm like, you can kind of tell it has, you know, it definitely has, you know, blowing out some of the ones even down here. So yeah, and he's not doing it correctly, so that's why. But it's like, it's most played games, you know, so you can see here right now. At the moment, if you click on Crimson Desert and then you scroll down specifically, so.
Steam, so still really good results. And in fact, it was already announced by the Crimson Desert social media page here that they've managed to reach 2 million copies worldwide as of March 20th, 2026.
Hey,
so that's 2 million copies sold within 24 hours after the game's launch, which is not too shabby at all. And I'll be very curious to see if Crimson Desert sales have long legs, like say like CD Projekt titles, especially if they can improve a lot of the criticism surrounding the game. So far, it's a really great start, and there's enough like positivity and enough of a community rallying for its success that it feels like it's poised to succeed and to be in a really good position depending on how they handle things moving forward. Now, when it comes to how the investors are seeing all of this, when they saw that the Metacritic score wasn't anywhere as high as they were expecting it to be, I think the investors were thinking Crimson Desert was going to be Elden Ring levels of universal acclaim. It was going to be in the 90s when it comes to the overall aggregate Metacritic score. And so not seeing those kinds of numbers and instead seeing a 78, the publisher of Crimson Desert, Pearl Abyss, their stock plunged by nearly 30%.
Really? It actually went down? That's, well, I was going to say that's a shocker, but I was going to be like, no, it's not actually.
After the reviews started coming out, and that number is actually plunged even further if we go to Google right now and look at Pearl Abyss Corp's stock price. You can see right here, looking at how the stock has been doing over the last 6 months, you can see that it's been on this really steady rise and then a massive drop within a day after the game's launch. But yeah, investors are notoriously like overreactive. They have these knee-jerk reactions and don't really understand things too well. And, basically they looked at the Metascore and thought, oh, this game's going to tank when it comes to sales, but it's selling decently well right now. But at the same time, it wasn't that universal acclaim, and there was enough of a mixed reception that it made some investors a little spooked about the prospect of maintaining an investment in Pearl Abyss because, yeah, a lot is riding on the success of Crimson Desert for Pearl Abyss, given how many years this game has been in development and given the amount of hype surrounding the title. And so the ultimate result is that we're seeing headlines talking about all of this, the 2 million copies sold, which is, again, really impressive numbers, as well as mixed reviews across the board. We're seeing, like, literally people either really hate this game or really love this game. It feels like there are very few like reviews or there's very few feedback that lies somewhere in the middle. And then another big aspect worth addressing is how Crimson Desert would perform on base versions of consoles like PlayStation 5. We already know that on PlayStation 5 Pro it actually does fairly well, but they didn't send out review copies for the base PS5 version, and that got people worried that this might be another Cyberpunk 2077 kind of situation. And the end result of that has been, based on Digital Foundry's analysis here, is that if you play on quality mode, 30 frames per second, then you'll have a pretty good time and the visuals are good enough. But the second you turn on performance mode, that's when the imagery just looks awful and is nowhere near the like worthwhile experience to gain those additional frames. Basically, you kind of want to play in quality mode and just have a better visual experience than the visual mess.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to play that in 30 FPS though, to be frankly honest.
that is the performance mode that needs a lot of tweaking for that to be playable. Like, the frame rate isn't worth the amount of visual sacrifice that happens. So Synth Potato here, for example, who's played this game, highlighted how Crimson Desert performance mode on base PS5 and Xbox Series X does not look good at all. If you can handle 30 FPS, definitely play on quality mode, as the visual sacrifice is frankly too huge for this to be worth experiencing like this. And that generally seems to be the universal feedback. So base PS5, basically, it's a 30 FPS game as of the recording of this video. Now, despite all of that mixed reception, there are some aspects of this game that are proving to be controversial, like the potential discovery that AI-generated artwork might have been used in Crimson Desert. And given the negative impact that generative AI has had on, like the price...
I don't give a fuck about this topic. This topic is beating a fucking dead horse, dude. I am so tired of talking about the AI fucking conversation shit.
Of computing components such as RAM and SSDs and GPUs, given that generative AI often produces worse output and compromises the artistic integrity of a specific work. And, recently with DLSS 5 having gone all in on generative AI only for the output of the images shown to be like just classic Gen AI slop looking.
Yes, I'm gonna look at this one painting or so in this one specific region of the fucking map, in this one castle far away off in the fucking distance. I'm gonna look at it and be like, wow, this game sucks. It has generative AI in it.
Stuff. It almost looks like
I'm just
a
like,
Gen AI slot filter, and then combine that with all the controversy surrounding Gen AI, with the way it's trying to replace workers, with the way companies are exploiting the technology to essentially cheapen out on quality and on workers.
The difference is that Call of Duty is pretty shit at quality control. Compared to Expedition 33 has good quality control. Fucking Larian has good quality control. For God's sakes, at least Pearl Abyss has some good quality control. Other fucking studios can do really good with the fucking generative AI tool itself, compared to fucking Activision, Blizzard, and fucking EA, okay, and Ubisoft, all right? Them fuckers, you want to keep the tools away from them.
Instead of making human artistry the kind of center of what is a medium that is ultimately an art, video games, Gen AI is just not something that is being received particularly well, especially when it's implemented so poorly that it paves the road to paintings such as these that show clear signs of Gen AI usage. Like, for example, this painting right here, you can see like the horse's leg here is all kinds of wonky and off. And so the speculation right now is that Crimson Desert did decide to cheapen out a little bit and just implement some Gen AI art in there, thinking that nobody would notice or that the backlash wouldn't be substantial enough. So that's something that's creating a lot of headlines and causing some controversies among people who are completely against this kind of stuff. And it's stuff that's been called out in other games as well. Both Call of Duty Black Ops 7 as well as Battlefield 6 featured like microtransactions elements and cosmetic elements that were clearly made by Gen AI.
Yeah, but the differences between those or so is that they're trying to sell you this shit, while Crimson Desert is giving you a full completed game. While compared to Call of Duty and fucking Battlefield, the game is incomplete. It's a live service game until the next game comes out. Well, especially for Call of Duty. Call of Duty comes out like every year or so. They're going to be using AI or so, Gen AI or so, to sell you shit. While fucking Battlefield or so will probably do it for like a good amount of year or two, maybe, question mark. I'm not too sure if they do. I don't know if they do a second year or something, but they try to sell you this shit. They sell you this crap, and you guys buy it at the end of the day. People complain about AI is still kind of cringe. I'm so tired of the topic, to be frankly. I really am. I'm like so tired of talking about it. It's like, oh, Gen AI is bad. I don't care. I don't care. I'm having a fun time with the game itself, with Crimson Desert. Just because there's like a few paintings with a couple of AI in there is not gonna ruin my fucking playthrough of the game, So I don't know. When it comes to like Activision itself with Call of Duty, we all know for a fact those are the last people you ever want to trust them with the AI gen tool. Like all of them are pretty shitty or so when it comes to quality control.
And so, them cheapening out on that front, especially when they're charging money for such cosmetics.
No, it is. Like AI is part of the video game industry already. It's just the problem is these people are throwing a hissy fit for no fucking apparent reason when it's already part of it already. They're just not telling you guys about it. I don't know how many times I have to fucking repeat myself every single time. They're already using it. They don't give a fuck about your opinion, okay? They're already using it. They're not telling you guys because you guys keep throwing like a bitchy fit every single time, all right? They're using it. How do I know this? Because I know people in the industry that literally from the gaming industry, right? That they're artists, right? And they tell me that they use it as well. It just doesn't take over their entire workflow because they still do the fucking work still, okay? Get this through your head. Jesus fucking Christ, dude. It's so annoying to having to hear this goddamn topic over and over and over and over again. Are there some companies that don't use it? Yes, there are some companies that don't use it. But the ones that I've interacted with, they're the ones who do use it, okay? All right? Jesus.
Was something that was not received particularly well. And then with something like Crimson
it's just an
Desert,
annoying
it
topic
advertising
all
itself
the
as such a
time.
highly
It's so
detailed open
annoying.
world, people were hoping that Gen AI would not be involved and that they would really handcraft everything to make it something akin to, your Witchers and your Red Dead Redemption 2s and your Breath of the Wilds, all of that stuff that this game clearly draws inspiration from.
I bet you $10 they would probably use Gen AI too as well if that tech was available during back then, okay? All right? Let's not beat around the bush around here, okay? All right?
And those being
They would
pinnacles of
probably use it
handcrafted
too.
content, with Crimson Desert now featuring potentially some like Gen AI stuff. There's some eyebrows being raised on that front.
I don't
And then
care
one
about
last
the
thing to
Gen AI.
highlight
I
is
really don't.
Pearl Abyss developers speaking out about what happened to Crimson Desert and why, despite all of the aspects of it that people are enjoying about it, there's so many things that feel off, or why there's so many friction points, or why things feel janky and disjointed in areas where they shouldn't, where if they had smoothed that out, this would have been a far...
The reason why I have to say there, so Call of Duty did it for quite a while too. They did not disclose or so whatsoever that they were using AI. So like they didn't disclose it or so. And after a while, once they did get caught or so, I think it was a certain period of time or so that they still didn't disclose it until then. So, and it's the same thing with Expedition 33. They didn't disclose it either. Are you going to say the same thing for them too as well? I'm like, Larian is also using AI. Are we gonna do that the same thing as well to them? If you're gonna do the same thing for this game, I expect you to do the same shit for every single game. That's all I gotta say about it. So, like, I'm just tired of it. I'm just fucking tired of it at the end of the day.
More, I think,
I'm
compelling
tired of this
experience
topic,
for
boss.
people
I'm tired of
who
it.
are looking to get hooked within like the first hour or two.
I expect you to do
of
the same
game.
shit for every
And
single
basically,
game that's
two
coming out in the
developers
future.
spoke out
That's all I gotta
via
say.
Korean forums. As being a Korean developed game, the developers, of course, would take to Korean forums to speak out. And basically, they talked about how this development cycle for Crimson Desert was actually pretty rough, with revelations like how the story was not decided until right before release, which explains why there's just a general lack of story, or why the story feels so like not even secondary, like tertiary, and why it seems so overall absent and disjointed overall across.
Hey, that's none of my business or so when literally every single game company is starting to use Gen AI at the end of the day. Like I said, if you're gonna go after one specific game, I expect you to go through every single specific game. That's all I gotta say.
The board, where there's just no real good flow. Apparently, Cliff was originally named McDuff, but the name was changed because it has serial killer vibes, whatever that means. But then scrolling further down, there's talk about an internal power struggle. Apparently, in the middle of development, a director was pushed out in a power struggle and resigned. And once someone from an art background became the general manager, they started overturning everything. And what started happening from then on is that they basically started to look at every other popular game that's open world and just kind of started to shove mechanics into the game without rhyme or reason. So this developer claims that when Zelda Tears of the Kingdom came out, they hurriedly followed and made Sky Islands that make no sense. Basically being like, oh, that's cool, let's just add it in our game because it's cool. They brought in function.
So this game is basically made with like not really a straightforward vision, basically. It's basically reminds me of like, oh, they have a cool thing. I want to add it into my game. There was another specific studio that did the same exact thing as well, but their game did not succeed. I don't remember what game it was though.
From various games as references, but without understanding at all why those functions were put into those games. If it looks cool, they just said, fuck it, put it in, and once it is implemented, they gather among themselves and applaud. I don't know what to call this if not a frog in a well. There's a second developer who also spoke out and talked about how this company and the development studio was structured like an inverted pyramid, placing more leaders than rank and file employees, because basically, according to this developer's allegations, they only wanted people who unconditionally said yes, follow orders, and never talk back. In other words, every head at the top of that inverted pyramid is filled with people who think exactly the same way.
That's pretty bad in my personal opinion. You do not want yes men when it comes into an actual like gaming development whatsoever. So, like especially when I worked on the when I was working on Scatter V's game in general, right? I was basically saying like, no, you should probably, I was trying to give offers or so, like, or some ideas when we were talking super early about the game in general. We were coming up with some brainstorms and stuff like that, and we do this, we do that, we can do this, we can make the characters look that or whatever. And it kind of basically rolls down to that. I never was like completely like yes, 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 yes. I was just like, you know I sometimes, because granted, right, it was like super early or so. I'm not working with that team anymore. I stepped down from it personally, because I didn't want to say this personally, but there was one specific sentence that Scouter V said or so that kind of irked me a little bit. I was a little bit like, I was like, I wish you did not say that. I understand you're not saying it with malicious intent on it, but man, you saying that to me just makes me feel like, it kind of gave me a bit of a slap to the face for that one. But like I said, it was not out of malicious intent or so. I can understand why and I see the reasoning, but I will be like, I was like, it kind of irked me just a little bit, just a smidge, just a little smidge. It irked me, but it wasn't enough for me to care about it that much though. But I think personally, you do not want yes men. You always want people who want to like argue and challenge your stance or so of like how the game should be, how it should be leveled or so, and have a straight path towards what you need to make. Because at the end of the day, you're just gonna get some conglomerate mess of like random ideas together that makes no sense whatsoever.
Apparently, from what this developer is saying, the development studio was structured in a way where people only rise to the top if they are yes men. And so at the very top, you had a bunch of leaders who were all yes men, who were kind of like a bit of a hive mind. And if you didn't align with that
No,
top of the inverted pyramid, then you
I
were
said
kind of
I
brought
said I,
back
I
down. And
don't
so that
care.
created a scenario where even when developers raised
Stop defending for
concerns about
me.
things
Like
like
I
the
literally said, it's not a
controls
big
and
deal.
basically all of the issues that reviewers have been highlighting, they would basically not listen to that feedback from developers. So that's a bit of a shame, because as great as it is to explore the world of Crimson Desert and all it has to offer for people who really are into an experience like Crimson Desert, there are some very like objective friction points, and the reason those weren't fleshed out seems to stem from this inverted pyramid structure and just the lack of like listening to
So
feedback.
I'd be curious to see what other specific mechanics were they inspired from other video games. Because if they got the thing from Tears of the Kingdom, from the floating islands and everything, my question is, what other did they get inspired to add it into their game?
As well as like issues that happened during development with leadership that
Yeah, but the more voices are basically all yes, boss, add that in, boss, yes, boss, yes, that'd be cool, boss. Make sure we add this mechanic, boss. Okay, boss. All right, boss. Okay, boss. They're all just saying yes, without without any like standing argument against it or anything like that. That's why I'm just kind of like, yeah, it's just kind of like, okay, well, they're not really, like you're supposed to be challenging. You're supposed to be challenging your superior, so on like certain things, right? For me specifically, I didn't really argue, or not really argue, but I didn't say like no or anything like that. I was mostly trying to keep Scudder V in check or so, because he was kind of like having self doubt in his game in general. And I just kind of like slap him upside the head and be like, Hey man, don't you be thinking like that. Be confident in your goddamn product, for God's sakes, And that's kind of like basically I was trying to help him motivate himself to fucking get his spirits up. Jesus Christ. I was trying to help him specifically and whatnot, and that's kind of like pretty much it.
Ultimately got in the way and compromised aspects of the game that could have come out in a much more fleshed out and more polished fashion. This developer also
That's not the
echoed what the
topic that we're
first
talking
developer
about.
said about how they just praise their own work as amazing, and whenever they see a reference from here or there that looks good, they just shove it in without much thought, without much purpose other than, oh, that's cool, we just want to just put that in our game because it's cool, which, means the game has more content, but it might pave the road for a more disjointed experience, which is something that folks who are not as into Crimson Desert have been highlighting and has been a bit of a friction point for them as well. And basically, this developer insists that I don't think a proper direction can ever emerge from a company that suppresses people for calling out what is wrong.
That is pretty terrible, as where you want to have people who want to call out the direction or so of the game, because like if it's going all over the goddamn place and adding shit from different other games, it definitely sounds like that one other studio. I don't remember what other studio did this as well. They also started shoving in a bunch of cool shit in their game because they saw it in other video games and they thought it was really cool and they wanted to shove it into their game. I don't know what other game did that as well. I know there was one other game or one studio that did it as well, but if I remember correctly, their game didn't do very well. If I remember this correctly, I just don't remember exactly which one it is, but with this one, it actually was successful here for this, at least this game in general. But my question is, how long is that success going to keep up with this game?
All the common flaws users pointed out are the exact things we used to gather and say, isn't this a bit weird? But because of this inverted pyramid scheme, that feedback wasn't listened to until the game launched, and players criticized exactly what the developers thought players would criticize. And so now they're coming out saying, oh, we've heard your feedback, we're going to fix all this stuff. So yeah, there does seem to be some behind-the-scenes drama surrounding the development of Crimson Desert. There seems to be a general sense of like things were rough behind the scenes before they shipped this product.
And
while the things that Crimson Desert does right is something that is appealing a certain crowd that really loves Crimson Desert, there is no denying that some of that friction during the game's development can be felt in the friction that players can feel playing the game that makes it less than ideal or doesn't allow Crimson Desert to rise further than it could have had those things been like fixed or rectified or polished or fleshed out. So yeah, the question of does Crimson Desert live up to the hype surrounding its marketing? I feel like the answer is both yes and no.
It just kind of really depends what you're looking into in the game. Like if you're expecting like a big open world where you can just, do whatever you want without any tutorials and everything, then yeah, this is pretty much the game for you, But if you're expecting like a pretty rich, deep, like single player game or so with like very rich mechanics or very rich whatever in general, probably not. You're probably gonna be let down, specifically because the story is just, it's kind of like non-existent, to be frankly honest. Lore wise is kind of well, I don't know about lore wise. There's not really much happening, to be honest, in my personal opinion. What else can I think of? At least like I know I'm gonna play more of it, but at least like the taste of the game in general, not really much happening, at least at the moment. So, but I'll let you know or so a little bit more when we keep playing.
Depending on your perspective and what you were looking for in this game, if you were just looking for like a gameplay sandbox to play in and to have tons of content to do and to not have anything hold your hand and have this immense sense of discovery, if that's all you were looking for, then Crimson Desert might fulfill exactly what you...
You know what Crimson Desert reminds me of? It reminds me of like those gacha games, those open world gacha games. That's literally just what it reminds me of, like straight up. That's straight up what Crimson Desert is. It's just a big old open world sandlot game with like 3 characters. You don't have to pull for characters or anything like that, but you can go beat up some mobs over here, mobs over there, and puzzles here, puzzles there, boss over here, boss over there, and you just kind of, then there's a somewhat of a story, but even then, gacha games don't really have good stories either. So it's pretty much the same thing, to be frankly honest. It's just a triple triple A. I guess it's just a triple A game style. So
thought it might fulfill. But for people who are looking for an experience that is at the level of, you know,
I don't
your
know, because
Red
it's
Dead
charging
Redemption
double A
2s and
price.
Breath of
That's
the
why.
Wild and Witcher 3 and just live up to that level
I'll take a
of
look at that later,
quality and
Narnia.
it be like technically polished and not something that feels janky and something that feels like as refined as some of the best games
It's
we've
definitely not
ever
refined.
played, then you might not particularly be about Crimson Desert. Then it might not necessarily live up to that hype. For my part, I'm still getting through the game.
Yeah.
I've not put enough hours into it for me to be able to say if I like fully jive with it or not.
No, definitely it's not gonna have anything like that when it comes to Crimson Desert. Crimson Desert is like you pay one price and you get the full game. That's it.
The opening hours have proven a lot of the criticisms surrounding the game right. I do understand why some people like just cannot get into this game.
Yeah, of course.
But what's
Yeah.
really pulling me right now into this game is that sense of like curiosity and discovery. And I just want to keep seeing what's beyond. Like there's enough things about the mechanics and then like the things you do in this world that raise my curiosity enough, and then the sense of like me figuring it out as I go and how satisfying that feels, that's kind of like drawing me into the game and trickling in my interest and the hook surrounding this game. But the flaws are glaring enough from the outset that I would have some pause about just universally recommending this game to everyone. I would be like, what can you tolerate and what are you looking for in a game like this? And based on that, I might be like, this could be like one of the best experiences you have. Or if you're not into this particular kind of package with these kinds of flaws, it might be one of the worst experiences you have. But yeah, this is kind of the current state of Crimson Desert, what the general buzz has been like. It is ultimately a game that universally, it seems people agree, is not for everyone. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's that thing of like a game made for everyone is a game made for no one. Whereas, you know, this will find its audience, you know what I mean? Because it's such a specific experience that some people really hate, but the people who will love it, like, will really love it. And you can see that in the feedback that the people who really love it have provided. But yeah, this is kind of an overview of what Crimson Desert has been like, especially at launch. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on this game if you've played it in the comments below. Are the
I played it. It's we're gonna play a little bit more, of course, but I'm just kind of like, I don't really care about the AI thing in general, so it's just kind of like it's just beating a dead horse at this point. I'm tired of that conversation at the end of the day. I'm really tired of it. It's like, oh, it's using generative AI for this one painting in this one specific castle in a faraway land off on the map over there, off in who knows what in Ton over there, you know? Oh my god, on this one specific floor, on this one specific room, but you can't access that room unless you get the key or so in chapter fucking 16 or so of unlocking that specific part of the map. Oh my god. My experience is ruined. Oh my lord. I'm just kind of like, I don't care. I don't care. It's not gonna ruin my experience with just like a couple of paintings just having generative AI in it, okay? But yeah, like I said, if you're gonna do this, if you're gonna start doing this, start policing everybody in the gaming scene or stuff for this, then you better be policing every single game that's gonna be coming out in the future then. So I don't care. I want you to start policing them, every single one. So I don't want this goddamn hypocrisy already. Just because you're going after one, you should be going after all of them at the end of the day. I'm like, Expedition 33 used it. I'm like, Crimson Desert used it. Larian Studio is using it right now at the moment. Thank you for the follow. Welcome. So it's just, I'm just kind of like, I'm like, Activision is using it too, but they talked about it, but no one cares at the end of the day. So, but at the end of the day, it's Call of Duty players. They really don't care really that much, to be honest. But yeah, that's kind of like basically it though. But personally, like I'm gonna keep playing it more. The only thing I'm so like I get confused personally is just the button controls. That's about it. The buttons are so in general, I get a little bit confused on them just because like muscle memory from other games in general just kind of like take over, and I just get like, oh right, that's not the button that does it. So but we'll see. I know that they just released a patch or so during the recording of this video, so we'll check it out and see what the patch did and everything. Activision just copied and pasted everything from AI, and hence we got Black Ops 7. Yeah, that's basically. Yeah. I'm like, if you're expecting Activision to fucking use the tool in an actual good way, you're out of your damn mind. Especially with freaking EA. EA, Activision, fucking Ubisoft, and whatever, insert whatever other studio here. They're the ones who are going to use the tool to fucking, you know, to save money and get rid of artists, while these other specific studios are using the tool to help their artists, you know, to make things to flow a lot more easier for them. But, you know, people don't understand. They just say, oh, you use AI in your workflow? Oh, bad, bad, bad. Cancel, cancel, cancel. And I'm just kind of like, shut the fuck up at this point. I don't care at this point. I am getting so sick and tired of this conversation. But yeah. Anyways, that's the end of the video. And we'll see. We'll see what's going on there. So we'll definitely keep playing it more after this. So, and peace.